Tula kerila kerila.
Tula mtana mtana. Asile na yesize. 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 Tula mtana mtana. Asile na yesize.
My name is Tsietsi Makunye. I happened to be born by what was said in Bank area. Bank area is a area actually that was semi-rural, semi-township, and before it is taken to Kuzong. So this area in Kuzong where we were, they were informal settlement and formal settlement. Although let me start, actually I was born in 1960, okay, in January 31st. So we stayed, actually from my upbringing, actually I stayed in the informal settlement. Although we would meet actually some of our formal people, because my uncle was in the formal area, and my uncle, some of them actually stayed in the same area, in some of our relatives. So in the informal settlement, there have been a problem actually that we had people actually that are representing us. They were called Dibonda, where they were constantly actually call meetings actually to say to people actually this is what their planning is. But this was not actually something actually about developing our people. It's about informing people actually that some of our people actually will be taken to areas like the Bantustans. They use the GG in our informal areas to take some of the people, and people actually were subjected to pay rent. Those who didn't pay rent were taken actually to those Bantustans. In the 1970s, we had somehow started actually to realize actually that our people are misled by these Bantustans leaders and some of the Dibondati councillors, the former regime. And when these people actually were informed, then we started actually to realize that we need to do something about it. Although there were committees that were working, but they were constantly harassed by the municipal police. Those they used actually to crush anything actually that the people actually was to come up with the development, or resisting somehow they crush actually anything actually that would be developing our people. Although there were committees in our townships, although they were not so effective, and the fear that they had because of those police would come break down the areas, like areas where we happen to be those people actually where they were staying actually in the informal settlement. They would crash actually and threaten your cuckoo, and you'll be forced actually to be taken by the GG to the Bantustan. So although it was a forced removal actually for our people, we saw this thing actually as dumping our people actually in an area where they are unknown. And the constant actually arrival meetings actually called at our community halls by these councillors. With the then starting of the Bantustan area establishments. We had visits actually from Tate Mangope, Tate Matanzima from Transkei, Botike Mopedi, you know, and the others actually, in order to you know, to have or to be on the payroll of the white origin. We don't know how it worked, but anyhow, we know obviously those are the people actually that were misleading our people actually further on to say, well, they are building a better life for them. Although the work, wherever they were taking these people actually were taken into a field, no work, far away from their workplace, some of them. Mostly it will be women. Men will be taken actually because of the woman perhaps happened to be resisting, so they will take the husband because non-payment of rates and etc. things actually happened. So these are the regime actually that started actually to organize ourselves, where we started actually to organize ourselves. We organized ourselves actually in coming up resisting. There was a bucket system actually in the formal area and informal areas. I made a comment actually about that there were Spooktown and Felkumbers and the other area called Deloring and all those things. So those are the informal settlements. And our township actually was in the formal, was taken in order to divide our people. There were Makosan section, there was Batwane section, there was Zulu section, Swazi section, and all those things. You can see actually that totally it was to mean actually that people actually should separate, should be separated. And these things actually when we started to organize, because now we, you know, at school we started working, organizing ourselves, knowing one another, mix actually in the school with languages and all those things. And our upcoming as well, where we would meet actually and share the ideas and know this one is from Xhosa, and this one is a Sotho, this one is a Tswana, and all this. But we would meet actually so that we share ideas around issues actually as to how can we overcome some of the challenges actually that we see in our area. So although we're working in isolation, in that isolation where we worked actually there was the youth Christian movement. There were the committees actually, the committee of 12 of our adult people actually that were organized somehow, give us some information on all those things. In that actually, in the upbringing, when we were growing, is that you know, we wouldn't know some of our people actually were connected with somehow the underground movement, where you would be sent to a newspaper to go and buy a newspaper, and you read it in front of an adult and then indicate actually what is that we see. So you'd learn somehow there have been attack of the ANC in cross borders and others and all this. So starting on that, you'll be groomed to say, well, this is what you realize by an adult. What do you think actually would be best actually on this? So although they were working undergroundly, so you know somehow whether they belong to this movement or whatever. But in 1975 actually, then we started organizing as the youth, coming up with resistance actually, the party system, to say it must be eradicated by the youth councillors. But we would find some resistance as well the councillors with the usage of the police actually to crush whatever that we were against on them and all those things. So they were starting actually or crushing us, targeting some of our youth. And some of these youth would be taken to Zeras for brainwashing. Those who happen to be clever and all those things. But now in the other way around, actually, they would be used somehow in a way actually to infiltrate actually those that are troublesome. So they would come up with some of the systems like those ones when they see actually that we now gaining momentum around our issues and all those things. It was not only that people they didn't have houses. Our streets were not tired. So these are the grievances. The clinic was in a shabby plank way nearer to an area where they call it a bar. A bar would be something actually that would be used for our fathers actually to go and drink. It's a drinking place, and it was owned by the municipality and all those things. So they started actually expanding even into the township, actually building some bars and all those things, so that whoever wants some beer, he can get the beer. But although we had our people actually, because of the suffering, they had their own way of making their own entertainment and other things actually, like brewing their beers and all those things. Although the police, when they find out, they will be crushed and all those things. So there would be underground shavings and all those things. But when they find out is that you will be in trouble, then it will be crushed and then you go for jail and all those things. Or either high, you will be targeted actually to be sent to the homeland system. But in totality, actually, our people were suffering. Because schools, we never had high schools. Because once you pass your standard 6, you will be taken actually to homeland high schools. You know, our high schools were the either you were taken to Transkei, to Putatswana by then. So these are the areas that had high schools and all those things. So mostly of the townships or areas which were nearer to town actually were not given the access to education or higher education. So hence we started actually to say we demand even the clinic, we demand actually the schools, the high schools should be built and all those things. Although we had resistance actually from the councillors and anyone who would report whatever that they think actually is relevant, because we are those Mpimpis and all those things. I alluded to something like Zeras people taken to Zeras to brainwash, and then from there they become their Mpimpis and all those things. Now in 1979, we then started actually, because now we gained a lot of knowledge actually. And with the help of our teachers, where you would want to grab something actually, why things are like this and all those things, they would indicate this is what, although you know they would secretly give us some of the information to say, you know, this is a land actually where there is this apartheid actually. So hence these things are like this. But it's up to us actually to change this. So in 1979 then we started having these formations of the youth. I realized myself actually that there was a young Christian movement actually in the Anglican Church and the Methodist. And it was led by the comrade Dom Moeketsi, and it was led by Dogol Soto. So these are names actually that cropped up and all these things. I was a unionist actually, because I was working now, because I couldn't manage actually to go to high school, further actually because we had Badirile as a high school, but further on It was up until to JC. So in 1979, because of financial constraints, I couldn't further my education. So we started meeting with the comrades and all those things. But therefore, let me concentrate on one of the leaders that were there. We had Moeketsi, when there was a meetings actually when I started actually to meet with him. There was a meeting in our community hall. And in that community hall, we were called Basotho, the Kwangwetla. So there was this Kwangwetla, so they were building the Kwangwetla youth and all those things. And these Bantustan, they have their own informers to say, well, these are troublesome people, actually, you'll be identified and all those things. To say, why these Basotho, they never came to the meeting and they are resisting, are the ones actually troublemakers and all those things. So I met with the comrade actually by then. Although our meeting was like, I went there because I was now starting to be unionized. And, with a little bit of some politics actually that we gained, and resistance actually that we had in our township. I went there actually to say, to crush actually that we don't want our people actually to be sent into the Bantustan. And would make a call to say, if you are leaders of our community, is that our community, they don't have houses. Although you say there are houses actually wherever your Bantustan is, but it's far away from the workplace, and on the other side is it far away from our people, But we don't want the Bantustan system. So we met with the comrade actually. Although he didn't know me, well, we started actually sharing, when we were sharing some inputs and all those things. So he thought actually I'm a pro Dikwangwetla. After some time when I throw in actually some punches actually, some words actually to say, well, we resist any form of dividing our community. Then we started actually to realize actually we are in the same path, because the Christian movement actually, we were actually taken in and given some, mukhabulo, to know exactly our backgrounds and all those things. So in that Christian movement and all those things, so we learned about that. But further on actually, because it was in isolation, because obviously in different churches, different areas where we are attending, where we would get actually mukhabula and all those things. And being a unionist, these are our sufferings as workers and all those things. So we would meet about certain things, because people actually taken to Bantustan, they wouldn't have a workplace, they didn't have food and all those things. So we're throwing some of these things, and to demand, to say we would want actually the Bantustan system actually to be abolished, and it must stop now, because it creates sufferings to our people. Because the father is there, is taken, and then the mother is taken to the other one, because it's a Matswana, but they married and all this separate situation actually that happened. And our family is actually scattered all over. So we met with Comrade Tom that day. Then we sat down to know one another about what is our issues. Then we said, no, this is our issues. But us actually working differently into other like movements that were there, it don't help. So it's better for us actually to have a formation. And that formation would be one thing, that we throw punches, being together, and all those things. We understand actually, because obviously when we're working actually separately, not knowing one another, because of the fear, the apartheid system, the Maparwana coming in, the police would crush anything actually that would be there and all this. So that fear was amongst our people. But when we came, we started forming the complete youth into it. Okay. I don't know if I've covered all these things. Now, what I wanted to manual on. Then I started to realize actually that Comrade Tom was working at the mining industry. I'm working at the retail business, which is a shop actually called Fraser's. So the people were ununionized. The mining and the mining industry, they were ununionized. We started actually to work in building the unions actually for our people, and meet and recruit members to join actually the unions. So you worked in building actually the NUM, and I started to work actually to build Kauza. It was called Kauza. We then actually started actually to bring in, now intensifying the struggle. Would meet actually to the formation of the civic association, would meet actually to bring in workers so that we can have one voice and know exactly that this is our demand. A clinic, schools, bucket systems must be eradicated, other things. Now with Comrade Tom, but because obviously working in the industry, in the mining industry, would come and say, well, let's build a target for one another. And there's one of the target actually that we started, that we said, okay, Comrade Tom, that means for us to see actually that we now mean to work. Come up with a strategy. What are you going to do? There's separate showers in the mining industry. That's your target. You're going to go in there and shower with the white people. With me, actually, I was given actually the task to say, well, in the other areas where people were not organized properly, that will be a field actually that I will be working on it. Although, well, we were working, towards actually building a resistance for us. And the civic organization that we built, we wanted actually to intensify, and then they came in Kutsong Crisis Committee that was led by Comrade Manyosi and Buntate Malachi in our township. You know, we brought everyone on board so that at least we need to intensify. Some of the things actually that we started, because now we would work on programs, actually program of actions. We started with the boycott system. So now asithenge emashopini abamhlophe. Asapuna anything from being brought by white people actually, because obviously they are not even developing our area and all those things. So we started the boycott and all those things, because obviously the mining industry people were staying in the campus, so it was not having any effect. Then we brought in some of our people, Comrade Saudi, Comrade, I forgot this name, but it's an always we brought in, so that we have one simple thing for intensifying the occupying of the park in the white area, working in the areas where they were meant for whites, you know. So these are the things. We went to white only bars. So a lot of things actually that will be intensified. So we brought actually all this information together. Up until actually I was arrested in 1986, 1980 for 15 days. But in 1987, then I was arrested actually and put in isolation actually because of our action. Actually, because now they realize actually this is the person actually that is bringing in these other ideas to some of the youth. So 1987, I was detained. up until from January till November, in isolation. By these isolations, so we stay there, being alone, and all those things. And this has an effect to you because obviously being there, that's your toilet, that's your bed, and all those. You'll be open. They'll give you a food breaking or what they break actually for about 15 minutes and back to the cell and all this. You stay there for a lot of time. So this had effect actually on some of our comrades because we had to comrade Boduma, Buma Posa. The comrade I wanted to bring in from the NUM as well as Tate Blomo and all this. So they were somehow harassed in the area where they are because obviously there will be strikes everywhere. People now are organized and we wanted to change the federation of the union actually so that it has a proper way of saying actually what is the demand. Then we adopted actually the Freedom Charter, the formation of Osato. So we brought in actually in 1985. Although we were working, we're still working. Up until now, we're still working because we have not disciplined actually apartheid systems totally. I hope actually it covers a little bit of some background.